Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the And Also podcast. I'm your host, Madison. So today's guest is very special. Her name is Shea, and she owns a holistic-based therapeutic practice called Rooted Within. It is located here in upstate New York. Essentially, she does a lot of grief and trauma healing, and I wanted to have her on so we could talk about all things healing through your grief experience. We'll give you a lot more information about her program and what she does, but something that we are actually going to be doing together is I'm going to be doing her 8-week program. And we're going to talk a lot more about this in the episode, but over the next 8 weeks, I'm going to be participating in her trauma healing program and to work through some of my own stuff. And you guys know I have a lot of stuff to work through. So because of that, I figured it would be an awesome way to kind of actively work through some of these things while talking about them on the podcast. So for the next 8 weeks, at the end of every episode, I will be giving you guys a few minute update on what I'm working with in Shea's 8-week program and where I'm at in my grief and trauma healing. So I figured this would be such a cool hands-on experience to actually work through these things in real time, update you guys, and also share some of the alternatives to the classic sit-down talk therapy. So I'm really excited about that. Of course, we'll get more into that. But before we get into today's episode, let's do our drink of the day. So for today's drink of the day, we have Culture Pop, and I've only tried one flavor before, and so I really wanted to try to get into this. This is the wild berries and lime flavor. I love anything berry, blueberry, strawberry, wild berry. I'm into it, so let's give it a go. Come on, carbonation. Okay, let's try it. It smells so good. It's the way I literally spilled that all over myself. We're off to a great start. Awesome. Okay. Anyways, my review sucks because this is lukewarm. If this was cold, this would be so good. I need to get ice and cups before Shea gets here because this is going to be so good cold. I am so obsessed with this though. I love wild berry so much. So I kind of knew I was going to be into it, but hey, sometimes you get a weird wonky wild berry flavor. This is everything. Can't really taste the lime too much, which I'm happy about. I honestly wanted a true wild berry. So super good. Not too sweet. It definitely isn't as sweet as like a poppy, but it's still sweet enough to where you're like, okay, I'm into this. I'm into this very much. So yeah, Culture Pop, wild berry and lime. Try it out. Let me know what you think. And if you tried Culture Pop before, let me know what your favorite flavor is so I can try it in an upcoming episode. All right, you guys, so without further ado, let's introduce Shea, and we're going to get into today's episode talking about grief and trauma healing, how grief and trauma kind of live in the body, how we can work through that to become better versions of ourselves in our everyday lives. So let's get into it. So Shea, welcome to the And Also podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I'm so excited about this because I guess we've like known each other just through my sister. So you're friends with my sister Cheyenne, but we've never talked or like really had much of a conversation other than like, hi, how are you?
Yeah, exactly.
And then a few weeks ago, you reached out to me and just talked about what you do. And there was just like too much overlap to not talk about it more. So I would love if you could like talk about why you're here, what you're doing, and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I just want to say like when I got together with your sister a few weeks ago, she was just telling me like what you've been up to and just like how you're creating your life. And like what I heard from it is that you're just so passionate about caring for people in a way like that not many people are. So I just like wanted to like highlight and celebrate you in that because like it really does take a special person to just want to dedicate your life to supporting people in grief and in loss. And I just think it's a really beautiful thing. So
thank you.
Yeah, of course. So
Thanks.
that's why I wanted to reach out to you, because I think that we're both in the same line of work where we really want to support people in grieving and in healing. And it does take a village, and it takes people that like truly do care. So yeah, so just thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so happy that we're doing this. And I think too, everybody has their own way of dealing with grief, dealing with trauma, dealing with, you know, whatever mental health thing that they're going through. And I feel like there are so many avenues to get help, but I think the one that everyone just kind of knows is like, oh, just go to therapy, like talk therapy is the way. And for a lot of people, that isn't the way. And as great as it is for some people, for other people, it doesn't necessarily translate. And there are so many other options out there. So I would love if you could share what you do with your business, Rooted Within.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a little bit about like a backstory. So I was born and raised here in upstate New York, and I really had a great upbringing. My mom was a single mom, and she really did her best to support me and my two younger sisters.
Yeah.
But like any parents, like it can be exhausting and hard and challenging. And so my mom had a lot to work through as well because of her childhood. And so my mom, you know, went to meetings and did all the things to try to better herself. And same with my dad. Like, I feel like I saw them going to meetings and getting support and connecting with their friends for extra support.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until my mom met Kimberly Beekman, who's the founder of Inner Alignment. And my mom was like, I'm going to do Inner Alignment. I'm going to become certified to be a coach and a healer, to be able to not only know how to help people, but know how to like work on myself and be a better mom, be a better friend. And so I just saw the ripple effect in my mom's life in the way that, you know, she used to come home really angry and exhausted and didn't always know how to regulate her emotions until she started Inner Alignment. And after she really started it, she was really learning like how to voice like, I'm not upset about the dishwasher not being emptied. I'm upset because this brings me back to like my childhood and like
the deep root of it all.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was just such a good model for my sisters and I. Like, she would come home and she'd be like, I just need some time to just take care of myself so that I can be a better mom for you guys. And as kids, we're like, we just wanted to hang out with our mom. But
what does that all mean, girl?
Exactly. But now that I'm adult, I like get that. I'm like, that was so beautiful that she modeled that for us, because I think a lot of times people feel selfish for voicing their needs and their boundaries. But like, what a gift it is to like model to your kids, like, no, I actually need to take just like a minute to take care of myself so that I can love you guys better.
Right.
So fast forward to my journey, I just saw how that impacted her so greatly that, you know, once I graduated, I got my bachelor's in human development and child and family studies. And I always had such a heart for working with kids and families. But I worked at a psychiatric hospital where there was kids anywhere from 6 to 18 that were placed in this home because they had deep-rooted trauma and they didn't have a place to go. In that 9 months that I was there, I experienced such deep grief personally. Like, I just saw like how deep of like trauma and hurt they were experiencing that it was really hard to know how to care and support them, because like they didn't have the tools, they didn't have the regulation to know how to like voice what they needed. And so I learned so much from them, honestly, but I was leaving most days feeling pretty defeated. So that's when I started my journey with Inner Alignment, and I really started to work through areas of my heart that were deeply hurt, and I really realized like how to take care of myself. And after really uprooting so many things and feeling like capable and empowered to know how to take care of myself, I was like, I want everyone to experience this.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Right. So I ended up moving. So that's why I had to stop working at like the psychiatric hospital. But I was able to start teaching the kids the tools that I was learning in Inner Alignment. You know, there are some days where they're resistant to it because, adult telling them what to do. But other days, they really were like impacted by the tools of learning, like, oh, I can voice my needs. I don't always need to feel in like the fight or flight mode. Like, and it was really
literally me.
beautiful to watch that. So I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so June of 2023, I started my business Rooted Within because I really felt so rooted within myself that I was like, I want to be able to help people really feel rooted within as well.
That is such an interesting and impactful story because I think so many people, like the things that we're realizing at our ages, most people don't. Either they don't ever realize or they don't realize until they're much older.
Yeah.
They're much more like seasoned in life and they're just kind of like, wow, these things just keep coming up. So it is really cool that one, like we're able to look at this stuff now.
Yeah.
So that the rest of our lives, we don't have to like work through those deep roots in the same way as like, you know, someone who might realize when they're 50, 60 years old. So I think like with what you're doing, I guess like how does it all work? Like where do you start? What are you actually doing hands-on? How is it different from like maybe other forms of therapy or trauma healing?
So before I really start to explain, you know, I grew up going to therapy. So
Yeah.
I never want to not talk therapy because I think that it's helpful in different seasons of your life.
Yeah.
We've talked about this, right? And so I had a therapist and he was wonderful, gave me such an open space to share how I was feeling, which was so helpful in that season of my life. But as I was getting older and I got married and we were, you know, my husband and I want to have kids within the next couple years, I realized like as much as talking is helpful, it's not healing the root cause of why I keep responding and reacting in the same ways. And so, you know, I was like, I need something deeper than just talking. I need to actually learn how to work through this. So that's what I offer my clients is learning how to actually work through these things. So I have an 8 and a 12-week program. And in the first couple weeks, we're really just building a rapport because I really want to make sure my clients feel safe in talking to me because we are going to go deep and we are going to really uproot things that are deeply stored within our minds and in our bodies. And so the first couple weeks do just look like, I just want to hear like, what have you been through? What's your story?
What is this?
You know?
Yeah.
And then from there, we start small. We start with, you know, how does your body feel when you do get anxious, when you do get overwhelmed, when you get angry, when you get triggered? And from there, I really have my clients just start collecting data is what I call it. Instead of reacting when you get anxious this week, just tell me how your chest feels when you get anxious.
I can like literally put myself there just thinking about it, you know,
Wow,
like as soon as I even think about the word anxiety, like you can literally feel it, you know?
Yeah. So the crazy thing is that's just trauma that's stored within your body.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of times people don't know that and they're just like, my chest just feels like it's going to explode and I don't know what to do with it. It's crippling. And I'm like, what if you could just give yourself grace to know that that's just trauma that's been stored and it just needs someone to like nurture it and help give it space to be felt so that it doesn't need to stay stored.
Yes. Even just like the acknowledgement of it. Like I think with anxiety too, you know you're feeling it. You're trying to like almost solve it in a way. You're trying to pinpoint it to something, whether it's something going on that day, something you're stressed about, you know, whatever it is. And sometimes you can't find that pinpoint. And that's when you get even more anxious. And then you start spiraling and spiraling because you want to figure it out. You want to solve it. At least that's how it is for me.
Yeah.
So I think when you kind of shift your mindset of like, maybe nothing is wrong. Like maybe on the outside, everything is fine, but I'm feeling anxious because on the inside, like that's where there's this like chaos going on and you can't see it and you can't really pinpoint it in the same way as like, oh, I'm stressed out because I have an exam or whatever. So I think that mindset shift even just gives you space to be like, there's this thing that's happening and it's not an outside factor. It's just all of the buildup of like my entire life. Just sitting here, like wanting to be acknowledged and wanting to be like helped.
Exactly. And so a lot of times as well in like the second or third week of my program, I really want to help people develop the vision for their life because a lot of times people come to me and they're like, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to like look this way, whatever it may be. And I'm like, well, what do you want? Like, what if you could have everything you wanted and more?
Like, let's make a list.
Exactly.
A vision board.
Exactly. Like, what if like we started shifting our focus to what we did want and how we wanted to feel. And a lot of times we can't get to where we want to be or feel because there is trauma stored within our bodies and minds that it's like a block.
That's such a great way to explain. Like, it's literally a roadblock. You get there and you're like, well, guess I'm going to turn around. And then you wind up in square one, you know?
Exactly. I'm helping you get to where you want to be with small steps, small goals, so that by the end of the 8 and 12 weeks, you're able to be like, wow, there's been a lot of small shifts within my life. But when I look back, these are really actually big things because now I don't feel anxious anymore.
Right.
And now I actually feel like I can feel just lighter and healthier within myself. And so that's really what like the first couple of weeks looks like, is we're really just starting you to really practice mindfulness to understand yourself. And then we're also helping you understand like, why aren't you where you want to be and how can I help you get to where you want to be? So it's so cool. It's just so cool to see like when people come to me and they feel so defeated and hopeless. I actually had a client just a couple days ago say like, this is my life right now and I feel so hopeless and helpless and like I just don't feel like there's like any restoration that's going to be able to happen. And I looked at her and like so confident, I was just like, there's just some blocks. Like, we're going to get through this and like this will be restored. Maybe not in the way that like you want it to be, but even better. And she was like, that's all I needed to hear. Like, I just needed to hear that like I can get through this. That's really like, it's such a gift to be able to do that. And I feel like that's why I'm just so passionate about this work, because I do think we only can see what we know. But like for someone to look you in the eyes and be like, you're going to get through this. And actually it's really only, it can take just up to 8 to 12 weeks for you to start to see these shifts. It can be really like empowering, give so much people hope, you know? And the only reason that I can like really encourage that and speak life over that is because I've seen it in myself, I've seen it in my mom, and I've seen it in so many of my clients' life that like I know it's possible for you and you.
And some people are in really challenging situations where like maybe on the outside it probably does feel like they're never gonna get through that, but to see people actually like rise above that and kind of break through is definitely empowering for like everybody. Are there moments when you're working with clients where you can quite literally see them break through that barrier of like all of the things that they've been trying to work through, you can finally just see that moment? That's like
all the time.
I love that. I love
all the time. It's almost like I just had to like phrase something in a different way for it to like click for people. Or sometimes like they just need to get their own personal data after like, I always tell people, give it at least 4 weeks in my program, because it's like going to the gym. You're not just going to build a muscle overnight. Like you're not going to get a 6-pack overnight. It's going to take time, but you're going to see those shifts if you keep putting in the work. So typically at week 3 or 4 of my program, people are like, whoa, I feel different. Like I actually had someone say a couple weeks ago, I was so like hunched over and just closed off. And now I feel like open and light. And I was like, wow, what a beautiful like demonstration. Nice. And I saw that in her. I literally saw that in her. And at the end of the 8 weeks, I have their spouse, if they're in a relationship, I have their spouse come into the session.
That's awesome.
Just to give like a reflection of what they've seen. And with that specific woman that I was working with, her husband came in and he was like, she's just carrying herself differently. And I was like,
so you almost can't even explain it sometimes, but you can just almost feel it in the room, you know?
Yes, exactly.
So something I did want you to talk about is your education, because I know a lot of times with like coaches, it can oftentimes just be like people with an internet following that decide that they're an expert in something. And I know you, obviously that's how you met my sister, is at school. So if you could talk a little bit about what you studied and kind of how that contributes to what you're doing as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. So my first year of college, I thought I wanted to be a teacher. So my first year of college, I was learning all about like people's development, like how kids, their development, how adults, their personal development, how their mind was developing, how their body was developing. And then, that was so interesting. But then once we started, I needed to like actually teach people like math. I was like,
great.
okay, actually, maybe I don't want to be a teacher.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, in a way you are kind of a teacher when you think about it.
Exactly. I know. I was like, I know I can be a teacher, just not
just
in the traditional way of like
Yeah.
working in a school. So then I went out to SUNY Oneonta. That's when I met your sister, and I got my bachelor's in human development. So again, really learning how people are developing, how their minds are formed, how trauma affects the brain development, how it affects the body.
Yeah.
And then child and family studies is another part of that degree. So really understanding the family systems, how kids are raised and brought up and the different attachment styles. And then after I graduated, that's when I got certified to be an inner alignment practitioner. So to be an inner alignment practitioner coach, to be able to like coach people in these specific tools that I've been talking about, that was a 6-month program. So I needed to go through, I want to say about 16 to 20 weeks of being coached myself.
Okay.
So as I was getting coached.
That's really cool.
It's so cool.
Because you can actually see how it works. You're not just like sitting down with someone and being like, well, I didn't do this, but I'll try to help you.
Exactly. And I think it's so important for therapists, coaches to also do their own work.
Yes.
Because how can you help someone if you're not helping yourself, right? So I was so glad that was part of the certification. So I was getting coached, and then I was coaching 2 to 4 people during that time I was being coached as well, so I could get that real life experience as well. While I was also, each week I was learning specific tools about how to help people with how their minds were working and how they are responding to situations. And right now I'm actually also so that was level 2 of the inner alignment program. Now I'm in level 3. So this is a year-long certification.
Wow.
Yeah. And
how many levels are there?
There's 3.
Okay, so you're like the final boss right now.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I am on level 3, and I'm 9 months out of the certification.
Wow, so you're almost there.
I'm almost there. Yeah. So I'm getting certified in helping people with childhood trauma, learning where the trauma is stored, learning how trauma affects, our mind, body, and spirit. So that's kind of my education in a nutshell. I'm a big believer, and I'm going to continuously grow. My husband's always like, so when is the learning gonna stop? This is getting expensive. And I'm
literally,
like,
that's Jake too. It's like, you're going back to school again? Like, really? Literally, I can't stop. I'm like addicted to school. It's so, I wish I could be a professional student, honestly.
I am a big believer of like continuous learning. Right now I'm reading for the 2nd time, The Body Keeps the Score.
So like,
it's so good. So I'm always learning outside of my certifications and degrees because it's so important. Not everyone's cookie cutter, and I want to learn more and more about how people are designed and created to be.
And you mentioned not everyone is cookie cutter, and I think that's something I have really struggled with in terms of my own healing journey, because especially with grief therapy, there's things that are helpful, and then there's things that it's like, okay, I know all the facts about healing from grief allegedly, and like, the way that everything that you feel is normal, and it's all a spectrum of emotions, and there's going to be good days and bad days. You're going to have guilt and, all the things. Like, I know them as a fact of this is what grief is. And I feel like my issue in therapy was always like, it was almost those things just regurgitated to me. And I'm like, okay, I know that it's normal that I feel this way, but that doesn't help. Like, that's not helping me feel any better.
Yeah.
And sometimes somebody's saying to you like, oh, but you're doing it right. That doesn't help.
Yeah.
And I think realizing that made it hard for me to like pursue the path of therapy for grief.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in what you're doing, and this I think will be really good for the audience to hear, because we do talk a lot about grief.
Yeah.
So how does what you're doing overlap with like grief healing?
Well, I think that when you lose someone, when you're grieving, whatever it may look like, that's a traumatic experience. It is. And so I think paired with the grief and the traumatic events that happen with losing someone, and then like your life doesn't stop. Like
you gotta go to work the next day. Like
exactly. And there was already stuff before then that happened.
Yeah.
So when you're grieving and you're working through that trauma paired with other stuff in your life, I think that really my approach is that I continue to check in to see how you're doing with the grieving process and how you're just functioning in your everyday life, because I think that when we're grieving, our life does take a turn. We're seeing things differently.
There's like a before and after.
Exactly.
It's like, before this happened, I was this way. After this happened, like that person is literally gone. And this is like almost a new start.
Yeah, exactly. So for someone who walks into my program and says like, I just want to be a healthier person, my program is gonna look completely different for someone who just said, I just lost someone and my life is like completely different now. Like,
so it's very catered to like each experience.
Catered. Yeah. So I really make sure that I'm understanding my clients' needs, because you might not need to go to the gym 3 times a week. You might not need to go to like be plugged into like all these like community groups that you wanted to be plugged into before. It might look a lot different. So I'm working with a client right now who is severely traumatized. She had a really traumatic upbringing. This is her first time in like 35 years that she's ever done any form of therapy.
Wow.
And so
good for her.
I know.
That's awesome.
It's really amazing. So I'm not sitting there and saying like, go to the gym and
we got deep stuff to get into.
So why don't in the first 4 weeks, why don't we just focus on like feeling safe? And so for her, it just looks like she's like taking grounding walks. She's like really learning how to like take care of her body when she does feel unsafe and when she does feel triggered. And I'm giving her specific tools when she does feel that wave of grief and loss in her life. Then I'm giving her tools to know how to work through that. So my approach is very holistic. I'm not giving the same tools and same tasks, I would say, because it does look different for the season of life that you're in.
Yeah. With talking about your program, this is actually a good transition into what we're going to be doing going forward. So I guess if you want to talk about that and kind of like maybe the plan for, not necessarily the plan for like what we're going to do, because obviously we don't know yet, but just sort of like we're going to be doing the 8-week program and just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I'm so excited.
I am too. I've been telling everyone, I'm like, guys, I'm actually going to get help.
I love that. So yeah, like I'm just so excited to work with you, because I think that when working with grief in specific, there is going to be a lot of trauma that has probably been stored within your body, within your mind. So why it's so important to work through trauma is because when it's stored within your body, you're going to keep recreating the same cycles. It's going to stay frozen within your body. And so what I mean by that is if you get triggered, it looks different for everyone, but when people get triggered, they can either fight, they can like overreact, and start to just get really overwhelmed, angry, panicked. Some other people just freeze. Yeah. They just completely shut down and don't know how to respond. And so people respond in different ways. And so I don't know how you respond quite yet, but I'm excited to get to know how you are responding. And what we're going to be working on together is specifically the childhood trauma and any of the trauma in between now and then. Losing someone so close like you did, I gotta imagine that it's affecting your everyday life right now.
Oh, for sure. I'm like never not thinking about it. Like even if I'm not thinking about it, it's just like there. Yeah. And actually somebody asked me a really, really good question the other day. So I was a guest on a different podcast. I usually don't talk about my stuff I'm interviewing other people about their stuff. Yeah. So when I was in this interview, I was like, actually, I don't know how to talk about this in a way that's not me pretending like it's not me. And one of the questions was like, when you think about your loss, because this is somebody that, I've known Regis since I was 13. We dated till I was 20. Wow. Like that is such formative, intense years of your life. Like everything ever in my life that you experience as a teenager growing up it was always with him. It was, I got my first car. He got his first car. We got our licenses. We went to prom. Like all those really big things are all with him.
Yeah.
So now when I look back on my life, and the question was like, when you look back, how do you even feel looking back on your life? Because literally the person that was there through every single thing ever is not here. And like, is that a weird feeling? I'm like, yeah, it's really, really weird.
Yeah.
Because there is such a massive hole.
Yeah.
And now everything of my whole life that I look back on is not the same. Like I used to look back on it and be like, oh, that was like so fun and sweet and great and like what good times. But now it's tainted by this like dark cloud.
Yeah.
And just the lens is different. And, with my friends and even with both of my siblings, like they also grew up with him.
Yeah.
And there's grief there too for them. And that's something I've just realized. Like I'm not the only one grieving the loss of this person. Like everyone through my childhood is also feeling it. That's really intense, and that's like even beyond me and beyond my experience. But everything in my life looking back is now like coded in this grief. So I think that in itself is almost like, how do you even look at your life in the same way?
And I think that it's not about looking at it as the same as you used to. I think it's being able to hold the good memories and the really beautiful memories that were created, and holding like the loss of like what you are now experiencing, the loss of not having him here and creating those memories. And that's what I really try to help my clients do, is hold both, because I don't know how people can move forward if they're stuck in all the loss. I think that it can be really hard to move forward, but it's so important that you're still holding it and you're still keeping it near and dear to your heart, because it did happen, and you're valid and entitled to all the emotions, and you can still hold like the beauty and like all the memories that were created. And being able to hold both, I think, can be a really powerful thing to know. Like you're not forgetting about the person, but you're also continuing to live a life that doesn't look the same, but it looks different.
Right.
And I think that's important.
It's the and also of it all, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's literally like the one thing I really did take away from therapy, is that like it's not black and white. But then you look around, everything's black and white. It's like, oh, wait a second. I actually just realized that right now. Like that wasn't even part of the metaphor of it all, but oh my God, that's crazy. That is actually bizarre, because I am such a black and white thinker. I'm very much like, if I'm depressed and grieving and miserable, that's it. There's no good emotion like allowed to come in. But I don't hold the same energy for myself when there is good emotion. Then I still let in all the, depressing grief feelings. So it's really tough, and there has to be room for both. And I think that is honestly one of the greatest things you can learn in adult life, because I think so often we are taught from a young age, like, you should be happiness, and like everything's great, and like you don't want to be sad, you don't want to feel these things, you don't want to be angry, whatever. But those feelings are normal, and we have to have space for all of it. We can't just all be like happy and beaming all the time. Like that's just not life, So I think it's like almost unlearning that conditioning of thinking that your goal in life is to be happy. Honestly, like, I don't think that's really the goal here. I think the goal is to just like be okay and like get through it and just find moments where happiness is there, but also being okay with acknowledging all the other stuff that goes on,
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I think that's like so amazing and speaks to where you're at in your grieving journey, because I think that it is so easy to just get wrapped up in like, I don't know how to move on with my life, and like, this is so dark, it's so heavy, and like what will my life look like now? And I think it's really cool that you're able to like hold that, like hold the weight of it, but also to be like, I can hold this and process through it and feel all of the hard emotions, and like I can continue to create like new and beautiful ones while doing both. And so I think it's really amazing that you're doing that.
I'm trying. I think I could be better at practicing it for sure. But I think just like knowing it and like trying is worth something. So
yeah.
over the next 8 weeks, at the end of every episode, I'm going to be kind of doing a check-in, I guess, like a few minutes just talking about what we're doing together and where I'm at, because I think it's really important, just as somebody who is talking about this stuff, to also make sure that I am putting myself first too, and like taking care of myself.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people too, it is really, really hard to take that first step, because it feels like you're literally jumping off a cliff. Like it doesn't feel like, you know, just signing up for a program or calling a therapist or whatever. Like that feels like the most horrifying thing you could do sometimes, especially when you're in a place where you are kind of in that spiral of like anxiety and fear and trauma.
Yeah.
It's so hard to just reach out and like give yourself that space to feel it and to work through it. So do you have any advice for maybe somebody who wants to take that first step but just either isn't fully ready or doesn't know how, or just like any number of those kind of things?
Yeah. It's kind of a two-parter. I think the first thing that people can do if they don't feel ready to call a coach or call a therapist or whatever it may be, I would just say call someone that you trust. Call someone that you just feel like is a safe place to just kind of share and maybe even hold you accountable and support you in the season of life. Like I know for me personally, like when I've been in seasons of grieving and, you know, people are like, what can I do? It's like, you could bring the person back, like, but you can't, you know,
right,
like it's like there's literally nothing I feel like you can
No, that is
do.
that is so real. This is such a sidebar, but sometimes like when I'm working at the funeral home and you go up to somebody and you say like, is there anything I could do for you right now? They're like, can you bring my mom back? I'm like, I meant like a water or a coffee, and I feel so bad.
Yeah.
But really though, because it feels like that's the
the
only thing that could help you. And I think people think that there's like a fix.
Yeah.
So they try to like prescribe you all these things, and sometimes you just need the space.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like in that case, if like obviously you don't really know what you need, but you know, I would just start by thinking like, what are things that bring you little joys in your day? I always like start my like sessions with like asking people like, what were their little joys of the week? And for me personally, it's drinking a fun drink, having my morning coffee on the couch and like having a slow morning, going on walks with like my husband or with my best friend. And so I think that's like a really good place to start, is just to think about what are the things that bring you joy, even if it's those little things throughout your day, and asking someone that you trust, like, can you just come over and like sit on the couch and just like watch Gilmore Girls with me?
Right.
Or can we just like go to the gym once a week or go on a walk? Like, I think it's just reaching out and saying like, this is something that brings me a little bit of joy. Can we just do this together? I think is like a really beautiful step. You know, I've had some clients be like, I was so resistant to reaching out to you because this is really hard for me to ask someone for help. And I'm like, yeah, it's real, because I think that we are in a society where it's like we always should be on. We should be doing the best of the
mindset,
best.
grind set, rising grind. Like we have to be at a 10 all the time.
Yeah. And I think like the best thing that someone can do is just personally like reach out to me and just say like, be honest with me and be like, you know, this is really hard for me. And I just want to see if this is something that like aligns with like what I'm looking for. Like I am not salesy. I'm not trying to push my program on you. And I will be honest if like I can refer you to someone else if I don't think it's the best fit. But I think just starting by reaching out to someone in your life and then reaching out to a trusted therapist or coach to just be like, this is hard and this is scary and I just want to hear what this is about. And then going from there, I don't think that there needs to be like, if you reach out to a therapist, you're like, you have to fully commit. Yeah. But I think just like putting yourself out there and doing like one little step each day.
Yeah. And like you said, even if it's a friend or a family member or just someone you trust.
Yeah.
That too is really big, because some people don't talk about their stuff at all.
Yeah.
You know, and even just talking to a friend can feel scary. So I think that kind of brings me to like community. and how important it is. And I think that's something I realized in the past almost 2 years of my grief experience, because I think for a long time I was like, I can figure this out. Like, I know all the facts. I know how to grieve. I know everything about it.
Yeah.
So let me just, keep going and like apply all the things that I know. And then actually this summer in August, I hit, like, it took over a year for me to hit that wall of like, wow, this is way worse than I thought, and everything I've been doing has only been making it worse.
Yeah.
Because I've been isolating myself in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, this past summer I hit a point where it was either like I have to go to the mental hospital, or I can actually rely on my support system for once and like let them support me. Like, why do I have a support system when I'm not even letting them do their job as a support system, you know? So I literally, like, I reached out to all of my friends and I was like, I am suffering so badly. I am so miserable, and I need you. Like, in any way, I need you. When I told everybody, I mean, all of them were like, there. All of them. And in a way that I didn't know that they could be. And they were just like for once I felt like I could take a deep breath and be the hurt person that I never gave myself space to be.
Well, I guess I want to turn the question back on you, and then I can share my thoughts. But like, what do you think was so helpful in having your community come around you? Like, why was that so helpful for you?
I almost don't even know if it's exactly what they were doing or saying or any of it. I think it was almost showing myself that I deserved that, and that people actually care enough to give me that. Yeah. If that makes sense. Like, it was kind of almost like for so long, I convinced myself that I could do everything on my own, and that having other people around, like, it would be nice, but like, it doesn't fix anything. And I think this experience for me was the proof that I needed to know that I do deserve help. I am allowed to reach out. Nothing bad is going to happen. And now my friends know so much more about me, to where if I want to reach out a second time, it's a lot easier than the first time, where I have to explain what how I've been isolating myself for the past year and a half, and how I'm just like, I was raised in a way where I was taught that asking for help makes you weak, and having to explain all that to my friends and feeling so guilty and so stupid and so just like angry with myself that I let it get to that point. So that, like, once you get over that and you ask for help and you actually realize that people will support you and that it's not horrifying, it just makes you feel a lot lighter. So I don't even know if it was anything that they were actually doing, but it was just the fact that they were there, and the fact that I showed myself that I deserved that just as much as, people who come to me and ask me for help and support.
That's really beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. I think like it's just important for people listening to hear personally from you, because you have shared some of your journey with like the people that are following along with you. And I think coming from you is just really cool for people to hear. And it was really cool for me to hear you say that, because it's just going to affirm what I'm about to say. I think that like, I'm a big believer in just being vulnerable and going deep with people. Like, even, sometimes my younger sisters are just like, Shea, this doesn't like need to be serious. We like don't need to get
like, it doesn't have to be deep, but yes, it literally is though. Like, we're literally alive. We're literally like people living and going through things. Of course it's deep. What do you mean?
Exactly. But I just feel like going deep with people allows you to just create that like depth and connection so much faster with people, and it helps you to know you're not alone. Like, I think that like every situation in my life, good or bad, I want to share that with people to an extent, because it helps people to know they're not alone in what they're going through, that someone else has gone through it. And I think that that can be like the hardest thing about grief and about trauma, is that like you do feel like you're the only one in the world that's going through this right now, because you're so isolated and stuck in like where you are, that it's like no one could possibly understand. And it's like, what if people couldn't exactly understand, but they could still like come around you and like sympathize that like it must be so hard. It must be like devastating. And like, I want to like carry the load with you. Like, I want to like be here in it with you, whatever that looks like, I think is so important. And I think the last thing is just that like, I think that we only know what we know, if that makes sense. And so being able, like for me, to give my client a new tool that they've never thought of or practiced mentally, emotionally, physically, it empowers them to be like, wow, like I can feel different. I can think different. Like, and how empowering, like how hopeful that can be for people to be like, wow, there is, like, I can keep learning and trying new things to, like, hopefully feel different than how I do feel right now. So I think that's really important.
I fully agree with you. And I mean, I could just go on forever about how, you know, in grief, especially at my age where I'm at, you know, a lot of people don't relate to me or don't know what I'm going through, especially my friends, you know, like they might have known Regis a little bit, or maybe some of them never met him. So even this specific loss, they are not feeling it with me. So I think it's hard for me to like talk about it because I already know like, oh, they're not going to understand, but it's not about them understanding all the time. Sometimes it's just about them listening or being there, or, you know, doing something that is completely unrelated to the grief. Like, let's go get dinner. Let's like watch a movie. Let's just like do something fun where we can help you not feel so stuck. We always want people to like understand, or we always feel like no one gets me, but it's not always about somebody fully understanding the situation to a T. Sometimes it's just the support. I would love for you to share, if people are interested in working with you, how they can do that. Are you only local? Are you, you know, accessible everywhere?
I do have an office in Ballston Lake. So people can come to my office if they want to meet with me in person, absolutely. But then I also offer virtual sessions. So I have worked people all over the world, which is such a gift. So typically I meet with people on Zoom if they don't live locally, and you know, that's how we can work together. And then like in terms of like where people can find me, like I am on Instagram, Rooted with Shea, and then my business is called Rooted Within. So you can also find me if you just look up my website. And that's a great place to just like submit like a submission for if you just like want to learn more and you just want to talk to me. If you go on my website, you can just put in your contact information and we can just schedule a call and just kind of chat about what's going on for you. And I can share what's going on like through my program and just see if it works and aligns with what they're looking for.
If you want to connect with Shea, everything will be in the show notes, so you can just click the links there. And of course, we'll be doing our updates for the next 8 weeks, so you guys will get to hear a lot about that. And then maybe in 8 weeks I will feel a lot different than I do right now. So that's really exciting to look forward to. But thank you so much for coming on today and just sharing your experience. I'm so excited to be working with you and just to be just to know you now, like in the way that I do. I guess I never would have known that, you know, we have so much overlap and like so much in common. So
I know. You're so easy to talk to, Madison. And, you know, as I was getting ready this morning, I was just like filled with like gratitude and joy for just like you giving me an opportunity to just share this work with the world, because, you know, there are over 200 certified inner alignment practitioners, but we're growing and not many people know about us. And I think like I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to share this work with the world and trusting me with your own heart and what's going on for you, because I just believe in it so much, and I know like how different people can like feel and think once they do the deep work. So thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for just trusting me with your heart.
Yeah, thank you. And I think maybe at the end of 8 weeks we'll do a follow-up like full episode to talk about just the whole journey together, and then, you know, the audience can kind of see the transformation and the things we've been able to work through. So but thank you.
Can't wait.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching today's episode, and a huge thanks to Shea for coming on and sharing all of her knowledge, all of her own experience, and just for the work that she does for people who, like me, have a lot of to work through, let's be honest. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you, Shea, once again. If you are tuning in to the video version of this episode on YouTube, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. Check out all of our previous episodes. And if you're listening on any audio streaming platform, be sure to make sure you download the podcast, send it to a friend, and give the show a rating. It would mean the world. It is super helpful, and it helps us to get these impactful stories and experiences out there. So give it a rating, give it a like, whatever you got to do. All right, you guys, thanks once again, and I will talk to you in next week's episode, and I cannot wait to share with you what we have in store. All right, guys, take care and see you soon. Bye.